I'm a researcher belonging in university, associate professor at Meiji University, and I am also an architect, and I have my own office in Tokyo. And as a researcher, I am studying conventional constructions of buildings. So it's about how conventional construction has been changing over time. So that's why I'm interested in the physical elements of buildings. And as an architect, I prefer the elements of the building to exist in their own unique way. The first thing our team thought of was to provide an architecture scale experience. However, constructing a large structure for a 6-month exhibition will lead to a large amount of waste. So the idea was to transport a Japanese wooden house to Venice, which was about to be demolished. The number of vacant houses in Japan is said to be more than 13% of all houses now. So we thought we could find at least one house that we could use freely. In fact, it was found in Tokyo. And I'd like to more detailed explanation about Japanese house. The Japanese wooden structures are very flexible. So we decided to reconstruct the house to fit the local context in Venice. And the house is reconstructing the garden of the Japan Pavilion piece by piece. For example, the roof and the wall. And each of these parts has been found to be used in a different way from the original. For example, the roof has been converted into a bench. We also thought that this idea would make sense as an architecture exhibition to go all the way to Venice to see. This is because these things happened because the house moved from Tokyo to Venice, and they are very unique things to this exhibition. For this project, we did not think it would be appropriate to restore the original house. This is because the surrounding conditions are completely different when this house is in Venice than when it was in Tokyo. I think restoring the house to its original state when the surrounding conditions are different would be an exhibition of a dead house. What we have tried to do is to make the house living again in this place, in this context. So we did not restore, but reconstruct.
The concept note mentioned, we repurposed its elements into objects appropriate for the Venice site. You did also explain how the roof transformed. Can you elaborate on the appropriateness? Like how did you define what would be appropriate in Venice, for example?
For example, the roof was converted into a bench because we thought it would be better for the exhibition to have a place to sit. But we did not use functionalism as an alibi. I would venture to say that our way of thinking seems to be closer to contextualism. For example, the facade of the house was impressive because of its green color, but the green wall now sits in the forest of Giardini. When you visit the venue, you will find that these objects, strange as they may seem at first glance, are actually fitting in each place very well.
Could you talk a little more about the stratification of time within the structure? Because you did talk
Yes,
about that.
you mean the change of the house before I come to Venice, okay? Okay. The house has been expanded and renovated many times to become what it was before going to Venice. The house was newly built in 1954, so 75 years ago, and was initially a one-story building, but the final form is second-story building. And later in 1957, the house was divided into two parts to form a row house, and a new upper floor was added to one of the units. And the other units also had an additional upper floor built in 1961. And after that, the house was renovated to add a bath. And in 1982, a separate building was built for the children's marriage. When the house was first built, it was a handcrafted house, but with each renovations, industrialized components were installed, changing the final appearance to an industrial one.
Could you elaborate on how this installation is linked to the theme of How Will We Live Together of the Venice Architecture Biennale?
Mhm. As I said, on a long time scale, a building is just a temporary assembly of various elements or materials. So this project made us realize that the existence of building is floating in the expanse of time and space. The existence of building are in everywhere as a materials, and every time or the existence can find in the past or in future as a material or elements. And the elements that make up building travel between different people and different places. And these people include people from the past who are no longer with us. So we believe that the expanse of the building's existence itself can become a common ground for us to live together. It's our answer to Hasimi's question.
Um, the project will go on to have a permanent installation after the Biennale. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, the house will be dismantled again after the Biennale and go to the outskirts of Oslo in Norway. The materials will be used to build a facility where the residents can gather by themselves. And here we plan to keep the original form of the house and use it in a different way, which should be a good match with the design with the participants of the residents. And the project is a collaboration with the curators of the Philippine Pavilion. The curators of the Philippine Pavilion are originally working on the project here in Oslo, and we were invited to participate in it. The connection with the Philippine Pavilion was established through discussion among curators that began after the postponement due to the pandemic. So in that sense, the postponement of Biennale was not meaningless for us. There are no major alterations in the design of the reconstructed elements of the house. But since we suspect that many people will not be able to come to the Biennale this time, we have increased the role of the website. The website will be renewed at the same time as the opening of the Biennale as a kind of archive that shows the details of the series of processes of this house. So please check it after opening. We can't visit Venice because of the pandemic in Italy and Japan. So we tried to the installation online, virtual style. So for this project, the initial idea, but for this project, talking about this project, the initial idea or original idea was for the architects and artisans to go to Venice together and improvise the design on site. But however, the pandemic made this impossible. So we used Zoom to constantly connect Venice and Tokyo so that we could see the situations on site every time. But talking honestly, however, since the construction site is so busy, so it was not possible to communicate at any time. On the other hand, the artisans in Tokyo who were scheduled to go to Venice made mock-ups and fed the results back to the construction site. And the mock-ups are now on display at the parallel exhibition in Tokyo. And I should explain about the Mikoshi style now. The Mikoshi style moving on our Instagram. Yeah. In Japan, there is a small shrine called Mikoshi that is carried around by people during local festivals. And the Mikoshi is said to have a god on it during festivals. And the artisans were just kidding around when they carried the roof bench in the Mikoshi style. But moving a building has like a festival feeling to it. So they must have felt such a sense of festival, I think. Yeah.
What inspired the decision to release the digital, eventually release the digital interaction of the Tank and Venice collaboration online?
Yeah, for this project, we believe it is important to keep the building process open. The reason for this is we want visitors to have a sense of participation in the long process of this house through the exhibition at the Biennale. So the release of digital interactions is based on the same intentions. Okay.
In the notes, you mentioned that the population decline faced by Japan also was one of the factors, and it has an impact on the built environment. Could you elaborate on this and tell us how this declining population impacts the built environment?
Yeah, due to population decline, there is a surplus of buildings and houses. So the importance of using vacant buildings and houses in creative ways is increasing nowadays in Japan. And now the population is aging as well as decreasing. So as a result, it is said that the number of carpenters in Japan is decreasing by 20,000 per year. It's a big number. So this situation makes it more important for architects to think together with artisans and carpenters on site, and sometimes do work at the construction site.